You, the broadcaster, chat, assignment, Alteryx, output, syntax, save, close.
How are you? Yeah. Hanging in there?
Feeling better?
On the mend.
What'd you have?
Still in here. It's a lot of liquid.
What do you have?
A lot of liquid.
A lot of liquid.
Yeah. All right, it's 1 o'clock. Let's learn something, shall we? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you feel like I feel. There's a lot going around right now. You guys sharing cups and licking doorknobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of how it goes. So pardon me for all of the odd noises that I'm going to make today, including talking about SPSS. Hooray. Joe, what's going on? I have a number of things to start off with today's discussion. The first of which being technology setup, which is a little different than we've done in the past. This is the same thing that I did on Sunday when I met with your teams, which is I have audio capture and video capture from this. I'm just capturing today what's on the screen because it's a technical demonstration of SPSS. And because you don't have SPSS on your machines, I think you can get the software from the library. I'm not sure. I'm not positive that you can. But it can be hard to follow along entirely if you can't do it on your own. But you will have an SPSS lab that's due on December 1st, which is next Friday or 2 Fridays from now. And I want to be able to demonstrate some things in a way that allows you to mimic it, follow along on your own pace at that time so that you can engage, you can take some notes, you can ask me some questions, you can stop me if I go too fast. You can just try to analyze, be critical of all the steps that we go through here, but mostly that it's captured in a way that if you want to play this back, do what I do when you generate your lab, that you have that opportunity here. So this is going to be captured, archived, and then embedded into Sakai. If you haven't seen Sakai recently, there's a couple new modules. This is what I captured from Sunday, when I was up here Sunday afternoon/evening. I have the sound muted, though the sound was captured. If I don't have the sound muted, then we get some delicious feedback. But effectively, I talk about and walk through a number of different steps of how to analyze data. Now, the benefit juice group did a lot of group comparisons. So if your team and your analysis requires a lot of group comparisons, this could be a good point or frame of reference for you. You can see I switch between Excel and some SPSS syntax, which is the same exercise that we're going to be working on today. One of the groups from the 11:30 class was kind enough to let me use their survey, and I simulated some data last night, and I played with the data enough so that I can give you some pretty concise demonstration of the fundamentals of executing a couple of basic tasks in SPSS. most of which are the things that you're required to do for the SPSS lab, which I'm going to describe in a second. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Hence me bringing my own hardware. Some things in SPSS require the dirty mouse, so I brought my own. And so on. So your project and proposal grades are halfway completed. I didn't get to them Monday and Tuesday because I didn't get to much of anything Monday or Tuesday. However, I got about half of them graded, and they're mostly in the B range. If you really want to get your grade and get your feedback, stop by my office after 3 p.m. tomorrow. I'll be there from 3 to 6. Stop by if you want. I can walk you through it. I can make sure yours is graded at the time. Otherwise, when all the feedback is done, I will be sending them out via email so you can see what the breakdown for each of the graded sections was based on what you provided me in your midterms and so on. Huge apologies for the big delay on that, but fortunately I can tell you that the grades aren't like horrible, so don't let this sort of Damocles be hanging over your head. Like, they're mostly in the B range, and part of the grading process was that I wanted to make sure that I looked at all of them first before I started trying to assess them on some reasonable or otherwise unreasonable set of expectations. I wanted to see effectively where the norm was across the board before I started to critique them on is this client-ready presentation material so far as I would see client-ready being, which is, I'd like to hold you to that standard. I think you hold yourselves to that standard, but I think at the same time, it's appropriate to weight it as such and to recognize what you put together for me and use that as the baseline, use that as the norm. So that's what you can expect for those things. The SPSS project, I'm going to outline in just a moment. This morning I submitted all 7 studies, all 7 projects, because Todd from the IRB asked that I submit all 7 of them collectively, so they can do one omnibus evaluation and assessment. Hopefully that they can in 24 to 48 hours say, yeah, class project, you guys are kosher, this is exempt, go ahead, release your studies. So your proposals and your midterms and all the different ways that you said, this is how we plan on collecting data, this is our sampling procedure, here's how we're going to randomly select names out of a hat from a random selection, or post things to GroupMe, or post things to Facebook, or so on, that you'll be able to all of those things. Added bonus, those teams that are working on sports, where you at, sports? So I did get an email back from Andrew on Tuesday night, once he got clear of Minnesota. I can forward that along to your teams to let you know where he stands on that. So he will be able to distribute these appropriately to the people that he deems fit. I think Katie does a lot of their emailing and correspondence, so she might be the person who's in charge of that. But I can give you the formal update that I got from him, as promised, after Minnesota. So hold up on releasing your studies right now until I do get some word back from IRB. Hopefully nothing needs to be revised, or we can just get the thumbs up for the class project. And I recognize that collecting sample will always be my nemesis. But when you've got a nemesis, it's good to have an ally. So I reached out to a number of people in the marketing department, including some of the people who teach marketing 434, and I said, hey, you guys are doing these projects too. You probably need to collect some sample too, right? And they were like, yeah. What do you got in mind? And I said, well, here's an idea. I do a little magic with, not magic, I do some stuff with Excel. And I was like, if you can give me a class roster with email address, and I got a class roster email address, and I've got a rotation algorithm that allows me to take your survey links, combine it with our survey links, and then distribute these survey links via a mass email to about 100 people, and get your commitment to volunteer to take 3 of their surveys, that I can get those individuals to take 3 of our surveys. Instantly and cooperatively generate a convenient sample of participants so that we can get our sample where it should be, or at least relatively close, pretty quickly. And Ainsley said, that sounds great, but she needs until Monday in order to make that happen. So while we don't have class on Tuesday, Ainsley said that she's going to reach out to me Monday, and when she gives me her list of survey links and her roster and those people who are willing to participate, then we'll distribute that. And if you're willing to do that and they're willing to help out, then we're immediately taking some of that pressure off of what it takes for you to collect some sample. You can go ahead and use your Facebook groups, use your group me's, use your all those things you outlined so that you wanted to use to collect your sample, so that you can have this ready to go sooner rather than later. Sound fair? Now, if anybody doesn't want to participate in this, please let me know, and I will opt you out of said correspondence. But otherwise, I'm going to default you in. But if you do want to default out, please let me know. At your leisure, doesn't have to be now. Just let me know. That will be randomly assigned based on the frame provided by the combination of this class and her class, and anybody else I hear back from. Any questions on anything I've rambled off so far?
So the grades, so our midterm grade includes our proposal, or are those two different grades?
So they're two separate things,
Okay.
but I look at them together because I know that you're working on these teams, and a lot of the things that you have in your midterm also reflected in your proposal. But the proposal, again, is only worth 5% of the overall course grade, but the midterm is worth a bit more. So I want to make sure like that reflects and balances appropriately. So if, let's say, your proposal is better than your midterm, that I don't take points away from your midterm and vice versa. I want to try to be as generous as I can. So look at how these things reflect each other.
Okay. And with like the Qualtrics lab and the SPSS lab, are those still listed 15%? So
Are they 15% or 10%?
I think
It's
they're
like 15.
Is it 15?
Yeah, and participation was 15. The midterm was
I think the midterm was 15.
15. Are we still having a final?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's get some more context on that. I thought the test assignment was 10%. Oh, you know what it was? Oh, it's because I don't think that quiz 1 was something that was it's class about measurement. I don't think it measured what we learned. I didn't think it was representative of the type of work. I mean, it still, in some sense, gets graded, but I didn't. I mean, there's grades associated with those, and only like I think if you didn't take it did your grade really suffer. But otherwise, I don't think anybody got lower than a C+ on that way I curved it. But since I didn't hit you with quizzes in class time, because that's not the way we're using class time, and that's the way I want our final to be designed to do, is that when I revisit, learn, memorize this stuff from the textbook, quiz, independent of anything, not independent entirely, but sort of separate from a lot of what our class discussion focuses on, to me, that doesn't seem like it's an accurate measurement or representation of what we're trying to do here. And that goes against what I believe is my teaching philosophy, and I don't like that. You need to see it more like a river that's carving its own path. Like we're learning something in here, and I want to be able to capture what we're learning in here in terms of assessment. So rather than make the final exam be something entirely like here, these book chapters, they reference the book chapters, but I want it to be focused on what we've been talking about in class. So for our last week, last 2 classes, we'll get ourselves more focused on what we're going to be seeing on that final exam. Be prepared for that. Some of it will be like the stuff we're talking about today, which is some analytic stuff, but it'll be things on like sampling procedure, design, question, levels of measurement, things like that. So it may actually reflect some of the stuff in quiz 1, but it's more of what we've been focusing on in class. Because I want to see if you independently have captured that in here somewhere. There was another part of that that I think I was trying to give you an answer to. Can you remind me?
I was just asking, I'm just looking at this. Yeah, because it was saying that the lab assignments, the SPSS and the Qualtrics, I was just wondering if they were together, like if they were both 10% or if you're combining them together. Because did we get a grade for our Qualtrics lab? Because I remember we got the feedback video.
Yeah, wait, for the Qualtrics lab?
Yeah. I don't remember seeing like an overall grade because I remember we got the feedback video.
Right. Let me get back to you on that. I know I have to have grades in the books because that went into your mid-semester grade.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think those were sort of along the same lines. I don't think anybody got less than a C on that. But I can reinvestigate that and let you know officially.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to introduce the SPSS assignment though, which is separate from the Qualtrics assignment. Again, it's another team assignment. I think it's a little bit more straightforward, perhaps, than some of the other assignments that we've seen. I want to challenge you. I think sometimes you benefit though at the end of the semester from something that's a little bit more straightforward. Hence the combination of me borrowing some instruction from Scott Wright as to the nature of a straightforward assignment for this stuff, as well as being able to today demo this for you and to know that it parallels the analysis that you'll be doing for your semester project as well, that there's a lot of overlap between the SPSS assignment and the final project and the final exam as well. Like all of these are really pretty. SPSS assignment. It's available in Sakai. In the module called SPSS assignment, it's brief instructions and some Excel data. Document looks like this. So you got to work in groups, no fewer than 3 to 4. Smaller groups means less efficient feedback. Sorry, fewer groups means more efficient feedback. There's an outline here of a data set. This data set contains 6 variables, 7 if you include respondent ID, 3 attitude variables and importance, a location and a gender variable. How those things are coded are all outlined in this assignment here. There are 10 tasks that you're asked to complete here. And what I'm going to be looking for here mostly is for you to be able to provide me an SPSS syntax file. The balance of today's class is going to be focused on, which is how to generate commands to produce output to answer the following questions. The first task, and there's 10 tasks, so basically 10% each, the level of measurement for each of the variables that's in this data set. And then transfer this Excel data into SPSS SAV save file. And then I give you some indication as to what menus you need to use to transform and analyze within SPSS in order to generate things like correlations, to generate histograms, to generate a one-sample t-test, and independent samples t-test, to calculate a correlation, again, to calculate a one-way Anova, and to generate a linear regression. There's also a couple of hints here. As we move from the first task to the last task, they do become a little bit more challenging, but I will be available to, this class is being captured basically so we can get some answers to these types of questions. And I think it's straightforward, at least in what's being asked of you, is if you can generate the command to produce this desired output. This is due on December 1st, which I believe is a Friday. Not this Friday or next Friday, but the following Friday. So we've got a couple of weeks to complete this. And all of this, like I said, is available in Sakai in the SPSS assignment folder. Now this does differ from the version that Scott provides to his students, trying to parallel what the other classes do. So if you already know that, oh my God, I know somebody who already did this assignment, this is not the same assignment, because I don't ask for the same things he does. I want you to show me how things are done rather than just generate output. The output doesn't mean anything to me. I want to know that you can generate commands. Questions on this assignment? It's probably in your best interest to at least take a look at what's being asked here before time gets away from you. I don't think this is a thing you can, I don't know that it's a thing you can knock out in like 2 hours, but you might be able to based on how much exposure you have to the stuff we're going to do today and generating commands and syntax. Because effectively, what we'll spend today doing is I can show you some fundamentals for using syntax and SPSS to generate output. But all of that is basically, if you can navigate the menus, point and click to create what you want to, but rather than generate output, paste the commands, then you'll always have those commands at your fingertips. You'll always be able to provide those responses. So that's what we're looking at there. Excuse me. Questions, comments, thoughts anywhere? How are we holding up today? We all right?
Pretty good.
Waiting for the weekend, waiting for Thanksgiving. Is that where we are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is anybody coming to class next week? Can we do anything? Can be around? You guys coming around next week?
Yeah.
All right. No class on Tuesday here, by the way. So sorry if you have stuff, but I'll be available on Monday or Tuesday next week if like your team decides you want to get cranking on some part of your analysis or some part of this assignment. We'll just have to set up an appointment. I can make myself available, but I just won't be hanging out on campus as part and parcel of the day. So I want to give you some context about the data that we're going to be looking at today. In the analysis procedures module, this data is available. Now, if you don't have SPSS available on your machine, the SAV file isn't really going to work for you. I'm not sure if students can get access to SPSS. I know that I go to the library, I ask for it, and they give me a little flash drive, and I enter a 16-digit code, plug the flash drive in, and then boom, I'm good to go. And I know it works pretty well on PCs. I don't know how compatible it is with Mac. I don't know if you have to do that thing where you tell Mac to pretend it's a PC in order to make it do. But that's our goal. The survey that we're going to be looking at, excuse me. Sorry, I'm so sorry for all the weird noises today. All of it. Now the hangout for today, if you want to see what's on the screen, you can click the hangout. But really what we're after is this Qualtrics preview is the survey we're going to be looking at. This is one of the groups that's working on academic advising. No one in here is working on academic advising. The long and short of it is, Director of Advising wanted to know something. There are no advisory groups. No. Wanted to know something about social media use. Wanted to know about advisor satisfaction and a number of different dimensions on there, as well as looking at class year and some other demographic variables. That survey looks like this. There's the invitation, following the template. And then we get started. First question is, are you a student? If you're not an undergraduate student, you get booted. Please indicate the offices that you have used while you're here. Over a 16-week semester, how many total hours do you spend with the following places? Please select the following social media platforms that you follow for OAS. Now, depending on what you select here, you will only be piped to how frequently you use these things, depending on what you said you follow. Please select the things you follow for CCEPD. And then how frequently you check those social media platforms. Where do you currently find information about academic requirements? How much of the information via email do you read? How much do you understand? How likely are you to read morning mail? How do you feel about the stuff sent to you about academic advising? If the Office of Academic Advising were to create Facebook, how likely would you be to follow, DM, like, comment, share? If they were to create an Instagram, how likely would you be to follow, DM, like, share? If they were to create a Twitter, how likely would you be to follow, DM, favorite, retweet? If they created a Snap, how likely would you be to add, DM, send snaps, view stories? Where would you like to get messages from academic advising about the following subjects? Select all that apply. Would you like to see messages from academic advising? Effectively, what's the right channel for the academic advising office to communicate any of this other information? How many times did you meet with your advisor last semester? On average, how long do your meetings last? How many advisors have you had? If you've had more than one, you get prompted to ask, why did you switch your advisor? Why do you schedule meetings? Because you want to get to know them, because you want other information, because you want to show engagement, to explain why you're not meeting your goals, to gain an advantage. How much time did you spend talking about the following things? How did you feel after your last advising meeting? How satisfied were you with the following things? For example, my advisor's effort to build a personal relationship, my advisor's knowledge of core requirements, preparation for the meeting, connections for career opportunities, encouragement to continue contact, advisor's support for greater goals or aspirations. All of the things you might think that you want from an advisor, or think you should get from an advisor, or wanted but never got, or got but didn't ask for. Relationship with your advisor, extremely good to extremely bad. What can your advisor improve on the most? Lastly, what is your gender? What is your GPA? What is your major? What is your class year? How did you find this survey? Someone told me, and I believed it. And thank you for taking the survey. It's pretty straightforward. We're looking for social media behaviors. We collected some demographics. We got some attitudinal stuff, so on. I simulated some data last night / this morning, and that's the data that's available in the analysis procedures file here. It looks like it's sitting here. By the way, if you're on a machine that the school offers, all you got to do is run the start menu, type SPSS. Will run a program called stats.exe, otherwise known as SPSS, the statistical package for social sciences. Now, I mentioned the thing I want from us the most is to create syntax files. A syntax file is a set of commands. Commands to generate output. Fingers are fat today. I'm going to talk about a bunch of the fundamentals that you need in order to generate different types of output. Some of these are the things that will literally be asked of you on your SPSS assignment. If you see things in this data, the way it was collected, questions that were asked, that are similar to the types of comparisons that you want to ask for your survey. When you saw the nature of some of these questions, I will, towards the end, show some things that you haven't seen before that I'm explicitly pointing out for explicit reasons, explicitly, so that you're aware of them. But otherwise, I just want to make sure that I hit you with some best practices and knowledge as to how to interface with this particular bit of software. I don't think it's too terribly complicated. One of the first things I put up here is starting a line with an asterisk. Anytime you start a line shift 8 with an asterisk, it is a comment, and you can say whatever. They're also all sentences. So while it's not case sensitive, capital or lower, it does end with a period. So if you try to run a command, for example, frequencies, and you don't put a period at the end of it, that changes from red to blue. Red means that you haven't completed your thought. Blue means that you have completed your thought. It's a sentence. While it's not case sensitive, it has to end with a period. This doesn't start with an asterisk, so it is a command. SPSS believes I'm trying to tell it to do something. It's trying to run the frequencies command. Most commands you can find simply by pointing and clicking from the menus up here. For us, the two menus we're most concerned about are transform and analyze. Actually, the one we're most concerned about for analysis is analyze. Yeah, analyze. Yeah, it's really, I think it's straightforward. And it may look like there's so much here, because it does offer a lot. But if you want to analyze, go to analyze. And up here, if you want to describe something, you go to descriptive statistics. If you want to compare something, you go to compare means. If you want to relate something, unfortunately, you have to go to correlate rather than relate. But if we're thinking about describing, comparing, and relating, we go to analyze and we describe, or we compare, or we correlate. Within describe, we can get descriptive statistics or frequencies if we just want to get counts or frequencies. We can do t-tests, and there's a couple different types of t-tests. For us, we're either going to be looking at one sample t-test, perhaps the type of t-test you were originally shown in stats class, where you have an expected value and a sample statistic, and you're comparing the sample statistic to an expected value. Or an independent samples t-test, where you have two groups, and you want to compare group A to group B. You want to compare your manipulation to your control. You want to compare people who have versus people who have not. But the independent samples t-test is how you compare two groups. If you have more than two groups, you have to do the thing called a one-way ANOVA. Those are all three things that you'll be asked to do on your SPSS lab assignment. So hopefully by the end of today, I can at least demonstrate to you exactly how you generate those three things. And if you pay attention or catch back up via the video, the whole point of capturing it, so that if you missed something the first time, along and find that portion and help tell your story that way.
When do you use the one-way ANOVA?
One-way ANOVA?
No, we said use the independent sample t-test for two groups.
Yeah.
And use the ANOVA for
more than two groups. Yep. So independent samples t-test compares two groups. In other words, categorical IVs on a dependent variable which is continuous. So ratio, interval, or ordinal, sometimes you can usually get away with it. However, you're going to use the one-way ANOVA if you have more than two groups. For example, class year. And a continuous dependent variable, such as satisfaction. Bless you.
Thank you.
How that feel? Yeah, I could go for one of those right now, actually. My ears keep doing that thing like I was in a pool all day. All right. I don't like that red glaring at me. So nothing on here right now is a command. This is all comments. This is all gibberish. If I run any of these things, well, it's not going to, because nothing here is a command. The first command I always run is get. I want to get a file. I want to get my data. And I would do that just the way you would open from any program. It works just the same way. I would go to open. I want to open the data. The data I already have saved, I've saved it to the desktop, and it's here. It's this 1130 sim data. I hit open. But rather than click open here, I'm going to click paste. And that's the same thing I'm going to do anytime I want to generate a command. It says, rather than execute this by hitting open, I hit paste. And it generates this syntax. Now, whether or not you know what this means, I can comment and tell you, running the line below, fat fingers today, will open the data I need. End it with a period. This becomes a comment. This regains its color. And now I know when I run this, Control R. And by the way, there's a number of different ways you can run things. I like Control R. But there's also a big green button up here. It looks like an arrow or a triangle or an arrow missing one of its legs or its leg. It says run selection. So if my cursor is in this line, ends with a period, starts with not an asterisk, starts with a letter, ends with a period, I can highlight part of it. I can highlight all of it. I can just put my cursor there or there or there. Control R or hit the green button. And I will be copying our output into Excel for ease of interpretation. In other words, so you can see it. My dirty mouse because SPSS doesn't let you hotkey copy, which is silly. But these are the this is a command I ran. I ran it twice. Didn't matter if I ran it twice, which was get this file. Actually have access to that data file. The data file has two views. It has a data view and it has a variable view. The data view looks pretty much like Excel with a header row on top for each of the variables. A bunch of this is Qualtrics gibberish until we get to things like Q1, Q2, and a bunch of Q2s, and then Q3 and a bunch of Q3s. I wish I knew what Q1, Q2, and Q3 stood for. Lucky for me, I have variable view. Variable view says for each of these variables, there's the Qualtrics gibberish, and then we get down to Q1, and Q2, and Q3, and Q4. Q1 is are you currently an undergraduate student at Providence College? We've got the label. We've also got the values. So the values are 1 for yes, 2 for no. Please indicate the offices that you have used. Now, the way Qualtrics codes this and generates the data turns this, which is Q2, into a bunch of nominal responses. Q2 sub 1, underscore 1 is generally read as sub, like subscript. Q2 sub 1, Q2 sub 2, Q2 sub 3 is Q2 sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, 4, 5. There are 5 responses here. for the 5 responses here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5. If someone selects this, they become a 1. If they don't get coded, and they are considered a missing value. I know that because if I go to the section marked and click the ellipsis, 1 indicates Office of Academic Services. Yes. Academic Advising Dean, Center for Career Education and Professional Development, Personal Counseling Center, and so on. So the richness of the data file generated by Qualtrics is available to you in variable view. This is my data file. It's got something that's got the data points in it that looks like quote unquote Excel, but then there's also the variable view, which contains all of our questions and any codes, which we call values, and the value labels. 1 means daily, 2 means 2 to 3 times, 3 is once a week, and so on. So that all of that is still captured here.
So instead of a 1, it would just read none every time, and that means that they did not answer that. That's what would be, like if we're trying to analyze this variable view, we would just look for values and then look for none.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's say it's these 5 variables that we're after, and we want to know something about these. For example, count how many people did this.
Mm-hmm.
The synonym for count is frequency, how frequently this thing occurs. If we want to analyze that, we want to describe descriptive statistics, frequencies. The variable that we want is on here somewhere. Totally not the way to do it, but Q2. I can hold Shift to highlight, hit the arrow, and now it's going to give me frequencies for these things. Now there's a bunch of different options that you can put in here. For example, you can get quartiles, percentiles, mean, median, mode, sum, standard deviation, skewness, kurtosis. You can generate a histogram. You can format it in certain ways, by ascending, by descending. But rather than hit OK to execute, I hit paste because I want to know the command. Doesn't look like I did anything until I go to my syntax. Frequencies for the variables listed here. It's going to give me the standard deviation mean because I selected that. It's going to give me a histogram because I selected that. It hasn't generated the output yet because I haven't run it. To run it, with my cursor anywhere in here, highlighting some, highlighting all and then some, Control R. It generates output. It generates 2 different types of output. One is the summary of all the variables that I just asked for, which I'm going to copy and paste into Excel so you can see a little better. You got to copy using the mouse because thanks SPSS. Still should have created this macro by now. All right. So for please indicate the offices you've used OAS, or let's widen these up a little bit. OAS, the Dean's Office, CCEPD, Counseling, Campus Ministry. 59 valid responses, 40 missing. 59 people said I have used OAS, 40 people didn't. 47 people said yes, 52 didn't. 57 people said yes, 42 people didn't. So that's one way that we can immediately generate some output. At some point, we may be using these other more specific levels of output. Copy, paste to show you what they look like. So we'll generate different types of tables to summarize the same information. These tables go question by question. This table generates a summary for all the variables you asked for. This table I find to be particularly useful for creating a bar chart. I highlight those 5 things. I hit F11 on a PC. It auto charts, and boom, I have a bar chart. One was the most, second most, third most, fourth most, fifth most. I've immediately created a bar chart and summarized this particular variable. Just count. There's shortcuts for all these commands as well. If I really wanted to do this, I would use that. That's basically the shorthand for doing everything we did up here except for creating these two pieces. Frequencies for Q2, 2 is an operator, Q5, Q25. Run it.
Does the same thing.
Does the same thing. Find that one. Does the same thing. Now run it. Same thing. Log free Q1 to Q25. There's that. It doesn't create the histogram or any of that stuff, bless you. It doesn't create the histogram or the statistics, the means, and so on, because I didn't specify for that. But that's really the shortcut, and it's the shorthand. The longer you use it, and the I don't know, just it's quicker to write things that way. And it's harder to get all these different things specifically that you want, but if you're just trying to generate some frequencies real quick, it goes like that.
For histogram and mean, can you just swipe out frequency or not?
Say again?
To do the mean or histogram, can you just swipe out FRE for histogram or mean or no?
What do you want me to do?
Like, can you just
Right
just
here?
do a command, like no, below that you just ran frequency. Yeah, can you just do mean instead, or is it not do it?
Oh, if you wanted to generate means, you would have to do.
Is that different?
There's a different command to generate means, but if you just said and ran that, what doesn't it like about this? Oh, it's out of order. And that would do the same thing. Though this variable, there's not a mean. Let's find something where we could actually calculate a mean. How about how satisfied are you with regards to the following? Q27, all these Q27s. So what's great about using syntax is as soon as you realize like this is the thing you want to do, whether it's generate a histogram, whether it's compare means, whether it's do an Anova, whether it's calculate a correlation, as soon as you have what you want, all you got to do is replace what you want with what you don't want. Now here, carriage return, it actually sees, it may be hard to see here, but there's between these numbers 27 to 33 in the commands, there's a little pentagon here and here, and a line that connects them, indicating to SPSS that all of this is a single command. So I don't have to list out my variables horizontally, I can list them vertically. And I want to do frequencies for Q27, but also calculate the mean, and well, let's put a histogram in there as well. In order to get a histogram, I just got to make sure somewhere in here it says /histogram.
And you end all commands in a period, right?
Always. Because if I get rid of the period, well, let's make sure this is frequency, so it'll. Yeah, when you've got the full command written here, things will change colors. If you're using the abbreviations, it won't. But I put the period here. Red turns blue, which means it's kosher. Otherwise, it's whatever the opposite of that is. And then I run this, Control R. Log at the top says I ran this command. Generated these. Copy Excel. All right. It says I have 99 valid responses for these 6 questions. For example, there's all HME C. All right. And this is SAT. 13 people were extremely dissatisfied. 16 were somewhat dissatisfied with my advisor's effort to build a personal relationship. Sorry, can't love everybody. Certainly make an effort. This generates the frequencies here. Excuse me. F11 will make me a picture, double click, reduce the gap width. We call that a histogram for this question. How satisfied are you with regards to the following? But I also specified up here that I wanted to get a histogram. So down here where it says histograms, I can see SPSS also generated a histogram. And wouldn't you know, this histogram looks just like this histogram. So whether you take the table into Excel and use its charting function to create a histogram, or use SPSS's histogram function, I prefer Excel because it allows me to modify things and change things and make things better. But you can also run histograms. It's actually pretty useful in SPSS. With continuous data, it's good to get to know whether or not you've got somewhat uniform modal and balanced data. That almost looks bimodal, where we have a chunk of people. This one's much more. This one totally. This one, how satisfied are you with my advisor's support of my goals and aspirations? People are either dissatisfied or they're satisfied, but no one's in the middle, or it's very infrequent frequency. It's infrequent that people end up in the middle on this variable. For the most part, we're either dissatisfied or we're satisfied. I'm not sure which one's which, but I can check the value labels to make sure. But this is an example of where I see this question, which I might be interested in interpreting as continuous. It looks like it's something that I should probably dichotomize and say like a top 2 versus a bottom 3 or something like that. Histograms are useful in that regard. So far, that's some of the upfront fundamentals are whenever you want to do something, you click on what you're trying to do. For example, if you wanted to compare means and do like a one sample t-test where the expected value is 3, and you want to know whether or not the average generated from this variable 3, that's a t-test where the expected value is 3. That's the variable I want to calculate a sample mean for, and you run it. It's not significant because that p-value is big. It's a big p-value. It's not significantly different from 3. We'll talk more about what that analysis is in a second. How are we holding up so far? Brain buzzing a little bit. Maybe we're thinking about things that are similar to maybe the questions we're trying to ask. Holding on. Holding on. I got you. It's cool. That's, again, why we're documenting this. This is not intended to be the thing where you watch Jeff demo this now, capture everything. Maybe you write down a couple of notes. Hey, we talked about the independent samples t-test 54 minutes into class. So if you revisit this video and you go to minute 54, no, one sample t-test, At minute 54, we talk about one sample t-test. So if my SPSS lab says one sample t-test, I know I just got to do what Jeff did at minute 54.
Oh, this guy's being recorded?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
yeah. Capturing the screen and the audio.
Where's the, oh, on the audio.
Yeah, it's on a laptop. So all this stuff here is, yeah.
So if I go watch now, I'm going to hear myself at 155.
Yeah, and if you want to join the Hangout link is available in the chat module in Sakai. But mostly it's so, I know that I want to demonstrate a lot of things, and it's not as good, I think. I mean, I could type up some instructions, but I don't think that that's really what we're after here. I'd like to be able to get your questions, see what's similar to what you're trying to do. If you see questions in here that are similar to the questions you're asking in your study, and you want to be able to mimic or parrot, I mean, that's the thing with syntax. That's the thing with templates. And for me, it's just having, anytime I run studies, I think about when was the last time I executed this particular analysis, and I copy those set of commands, and I swap out the variables for the new variables, and I run that set of commands, and then I charge a bunch of money for it. So I've really only done one analysis, and I just repeat it anytime somebody asks me for something new. And maybe I'll add a different color scheme or something, but like, it's not that extreme, but it's not that far away either. There is one test that I want to show you. Now we did a bunch of independent samples t-tests with the benefit groups on Sunday. So if you're interested in comparing, as we looked at before, we said independent samples t-test compares two groups. But what if you have more than two groups and you want to, let's say, compare something such as satisfaction? That's an example of where a lot of people want you to use an analysis called an Anova, analysis of variance. It looks at the means and the variation for a number of different groups and looks to see if one group is significantly different from any other group. And then it goes to the next group and it looks to see if that group is significantly different from any other group. That analysis is called an Anova. The command in SPSS is one way or another. Here. But I don't know how to type these commands, but I know that it's going to compare groups. Or really, I should be thinking about comparing means. That way, to run the analysis, I analyze, compare means, and see this thing called one-way Anova. Gives you a tiny little dialog box here. Factor is your independent variable. Now, the independent variable that I want to use here is class year. I come to my data. I get to my variable view. I come to the column. It says, what was your class year? That's variable Q33. I want to run frequencies on Q33. Control R run. What is your class year? Copy that. Put that into Excel. Paste. Zoom. Alt HMC. Year. 20 freshmen, 23 sophomores, 26 juniors, 30 seniors for a total of 99 respondents. Highlight this mess and only this mess. Hit F11. Hate the bar chart. Love me some pie. Add me, I don't know, a legend. Get big, because that's what you do when you're a legend. You realize this is the big group, so you blow it out and say that big yellow piece represents the largest chunk of the pie, the class of 2018. In like 30 seconds, I generated a pie chart for summary statistics. Probably shouldn't call it frequency. By the way, chart acronym, last, legend, axis, scale, and title. Legend, axis, scale. Well, scale makes more sense for something like this. Make sure your scale is appropriate or inappropriate. And then title. His or her togram. Yeah. Class year is what I'm after in order to conduct this one-way ANOVA. My independent variable here, asterisk, independent variable is Q33, aka class year. My dependent variable, I want to look at those satisfaction variables we had here. So I go to Analyze, Compare Means, one-way ANOVA. The factor is going to be Q33, wherever that is. Boom. The dependent list, Q27. And then there's some options over here. I don't care about contrasts. I mentioned that post hoc tests, or after the fact tests, post hoc tests are extra things which help identify which group is different from which group. And it looks like there's at least 14 available here, depending on whether or not you assume equal variances or not. If you want to know more about Tukey or Tukey's SB or SIDAC or Chaffee or LSD, that's on you. I believe Chaffee was the one I was recommended back in 04 to use. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to check that box whenever I do this. But I never do this, so I never check that box. But you're going to be asked to recognize it. I talked down Anova so bad, but it does actually give us pretty keen insight for this example. Regardless, no boxes. Options. Options are good for the one-way ANOVA because you want descriptive statistics. You want to know the means for each of those groups. And it's probably good to have them plotted. So descriptive statistics, means plot, I would get both of those. Don't hit OK, hit paste. And suddenly we have one way for these dependent variables by this independent variable, which means you could actually do this for like, I think it caps at like 99. You could have 99 continuous independent variables here. I asked for descriptive statistics. I said you should plot some means. It defaults to something about what to do with missing data. And Control R, run. Before I run it, I clicked Analyze because I wanted to compare means. I compared means. And that's my independent variable. I could have selected anything here and then pasted it and then decided, you know what? That's not the variable I want. This is the variable I want. And again, SPSS sees this whole thing as one command. The advantage of using syntax is as soon as you realize what analysis you're trying to run, you get the set of commands you need, and then just swap out the variable names for the other variables you're trying to look at. That's all you do. I'm going to Control R and run this comparison. Oh gosh, there's a whole bunch of crap here. Now these are the descriptive statistics that I asked for. Don't care about those right now. What I care about is this thing that says ANOVA. which is actually the model, like a regression or something, which helps me look at the data. And effectively what we have is six different comparisons. This dependent variable, how satisfied are you with your advisor's effort to build relationships? My advisor's knowledge of core requirements, my advisor's preparation for meetings, and so on. In order to execute this test, rather than comparing sampling error to standard error, we compare between groups variance to within groups variance. That's the analysis of variance part. Rather than comparing errors like a T or a Z, we're comparing variance. You may remember things such as degrees of freedom. There are 4 class years. There are 3 between groups. If you remember anything about degrees of freedom, perhaps you remember df equals n minus 1. Vaguely remember df equals n minus 1. Perhaps. It's the toughest formula we ever learned. Or if you don't, we're still doing the same thing here. We got 4 groups, we subtract 1, and that's how we get 3. There are 99 observations, we subtract 3 groups and 1 more from that, and we get 95 degrees of freedom. I'm not even asking you to remember that. What you need to look for when you calculate an Anova, look for when you calculate any statistic, and that's the significance value, otherwise known as p-value. Oh, no, not there. There. P-value. This is the p-value. And the smaller the p-value, the more evidence you have that the effect or the difference is real. Our 4 groups don't have any difference on these because p, in this case, is not close to 0. This is sometimes called an F test. F is the ratio between these 2 numbers. Actually, these 2 numbers. Squared errors. But none of these p-values are anywhere close to 0. P-values run from 0 to 1. None of these groups have p-values that are, wait a second. This p-value is not less than 0.05. 0.05 is the arbitrary, not arbitrary, it's a convention that we use in statistics. If you see a p-value less than 0.05, that's generally indicative that you have evidence to support your hypothesis, either that the relationship is real or that the difference is real. In this case, the p-value is close to 0.05. It's less than 0.1. Now, I recommend this as being a cutoff for you because for most of us, our sample sizes aren't going to be large enough to see effects. But a p-value that's less than 0.1 is what we sometimes refer to as being marginally significant. So for this particular question, how satisfied are you with regards to my advisor's encouragement to continue contact? At least one of these groups may be somewhat different from at least one of the other groups. That's where the means plot comes into play. It's hard to see some of the scaling, but for example, this was the first one we looked at. And for the 4 groups, class of 21, 20, 19, and 18, the averages range from about 3.15 to 3.35 on a 5-point scale. Both of those are really close to neutral. That even down here, the sophomore class is at a 3.15. The senior class is at a 3.35. These groups aren't very different from one another. I lost you.
No, we were just laughing.
So we definitely don't have that.
No?
Oh, no.
What do you have?
Not that. Almost 3. We're trying to graduate.
Yeah.
Oh, GPAs?
Yeah.
Oh, no, these aren't GPAs.
Oh.
No. These are the questions for, no, we can look at GPA. I believe that's Q32. We could look at GPA. But this is that question of how satisfied are you? How satisfied are you? How about this one? How satisfied are you with regards to the following? My advisor's encouragement to...
Sorry.
No worries. I should have looked at GPA. I don't know. We'll take a look at that. But I know this one is marginally significant, so it's worth taking a look at. Here, this ranges from a 2.25 for freshmen to 3.25 for seniors, and it almost appears linear over the 4 years here, from freshmen to sophomores to juniors to seniors. At 2.25, I believe on this scale is dissatisfied. It appears that freshmen are dissatisfied with regards to their advisor's encouragement to continue contact. Are, neutral, maybe a little bit more positive with regards to their advisor's encouragement to maintain contacts. Let's look at the GPAs by class. Let's see what this one is. Now, this is all simulated data, by the way. The GPA variable is Q31. And this goes back to what I was saying before. All I'm going to do is, I like that, so I'm going to save it. But I'm going to copy it. I'm going to say, you know what? Q31 is GPA. So I changed this to Q31. I just copied this command, swapped out my dependent variable. Let's take a look at my Anova. It's non-significant. So we don't say that any one of these groups is significantly different from any of the other groups. But if we did look at the means plot for GPAs here, we could see why they're not all that different, which is class of 2021 has an average GPA somewhere around the 2.3. Sophomores jump up to 2.8. Juniors hop back down to 2.3. Seniors level off at a 2.6.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was up all night simulating GPAs. No, but anyway, that's how the Anova works. But effectively, your analysis should be for, excuse me, any of these statistics. Value, hope that it's less than 0.1 or 0.0. Hope. Look to see if it's less than 0.05 or 0.1 to indicate some at least marginal or otherwise significant difference or evidence for relationships. I don't know if there's any other things in here which look similar to stuff you might want to do, but I can show you that now. Or I can just let you. Why, whatever are you looking at, Brookie?
Nothing.
Nothing? Yeah, that clock is fast, but if you guys want to scoot.
Really
There's a clock over there? Yeah. Hey, so again, this is available to you. I hope you at least maybe clock some minutes or know when we talk about stuff, because I think this will be a reference for you. And if you want to hear Aaron's voice, go to, minute 55. Say, hey, Mom, I made it. Listen to my voice. See you in class. I went. Hey, thanks for sticking around, guys.
You're out?
Capture from our summaries.
Oh, yeah.
He has that for us as well. He also gives us-
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We have a lot.
Nice little.
Yeah, I heard
week and a half off.
We have a lot to work.
I hope lacrosse practice.
That's what I got.
Cross practice?
Yeah, so cold.
Yeah, it was
5 to
good.
7, I was like, I'm gonna turn into an ice
I heard
cream.
I'm sure it was pleasant.
No, it was not.
But you had fun.
Yeah. I'm exercising.
Dinner and then break
Yeah.
for dessert, but I might go to New York for the days before.
No, I'm crossing my.
Yeah.
No, I heard you're low.
Thank you.
No, I won't. I don't make sure.
Bye, thank
Bye.
you.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
You guys.
Feel better?
Yeah, thanks.
Feel better, have a good break.
Yeah, likewise. You going back to Detroit? Or
Cincy.
Cincy?
Yes, I am.
Detroit. Oh, because we bumped into.
Yeah, you were in.
That
you were in
was. I was
Wisconsin.
convinced that you were in. You were
No, it was
from
my
Detroit.
connect. It was my
Your
connection.
connection was in
Yeah,
Detroit.
because there's no
right.
direct flights from Cincy to here.
Right,
There's
right.
two small airports. Detroit, Philly, or sometimes Atlanta, which makes 0 sense. But
Well, Atlanta will get you anywhere.
exactly.
Yeah.
You
are going back to Cincinnati?
Yeah, I didn't go through Detroit actually.
Right.
Pretty sure I have.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. Travel safely.
Yeah.
I'll see you when you get back.
Will do.